Over the weekend, I put out a video which seemed to strike a bit of a nerve. It's a video about how, while I'm really excited about Destiny because I love Destiny, a lot of people on the internet are not excited about it and were not particularly impressed by what they saw in the beta. I made the argument that I can sort of understand where they're coming from, because if you're someone that doesn't really understand what Destiny is and what it's all about, or you're someone that really wanted to be convinced because you were a bit skeptical about the experience, the beta probably wasn't the best showcase of everything new that's coming to Destiny 2. Casual observers may have looked at the beta and said, hey, that's the same as before, that's Destiny 1.5. And I said, well, Bungie really needs to counteract this because there's surely heaps of awesome new stuff coming, and Bungie needs to put the best foot forward so that everyone's super hyped for launch and they actually feel like they want to play this game. Well, we really didn't have to wait long for Bungie's response. Speaking to IGN as part of their IGN First program, where they get exclusive access to Destiny 2 information, Bungie revealed a whole heap of new stuff coming to Destiny 2, stuff that we have absolutely not seen in Destiny 1, and that definitely sets this sequel apart from the original game. I'm talking mainly about open world exploration and the different ways that we're going to be able to engage both the open world and the story as a whole, both during the campaign and after it. So the first big one are public events. Now obviously public events featured in the first game, but significant changes are coming to it this time around, and they seem way better than ever before. They've taken a lot of inspiration from things like the Court of Oryx and the Archon's Forge, areas where things got really intense and really hardcore, but obviously they were stuck in one single location and you always had to go back to the same place. The idea of public events in Destiny 2 is that they don't just spawn in one or two predictable locations, they actually can spawn pretty much anywhere all over the map. Now there are a number of new types of public events as well. They weren't too specific, but they did show off one example here where you have this giant Cabal ship above you trying to bombard you with lasers while you're fighting underneath it, which is pretty damn awesome. But they did say there were lots of different types of new public events coming as well, and perhaps the best part of it is that they each have a heroic trigger, so you can do something during the public event to spawn additional, more difficult enemies that are going to make it more challenging. So that's inherently going to make public events more rewarding for people who just like grinding out in the open world instead of having to run strikes again and again. The second thing they talked about were adventures, which are basically side missions. They're sort of small little tasks or quests that leverage the existing story of the area or specific characters or even the enemies that you're fighting against, and they give you just a little bit of insight into why it is that you're in this world and what you're doing. It all looked pretty simple. It seemed like collect some stuff and kill some things over there, but the idea that you actually have story woven into the quests of the game is, as funny as it sounds, actually like totally new to Destiny. You know, it's like a total thing that is like, wow, I can't believe that's finally here. Obviously it should have been there a long time ago, but to know that they're finally going down this path is pretty great. So perhaps the most interesting thing they talked about today were these lost sectors. Now the way this works is that you're wandering around in the open world and you'll see an icon, and that icon means that a lost sector is nearby, and after that you need to find the entrance to the lost sector, which apparently can be quite tricky. So it's going to be a bit of an Easter egg hunt to find how to get in. Once you do, you find that the area below is this big sprawling cave-like area with tons and tons of enemies, and eventually after you kill enough of the enemies you'll make it to the boss, or the boss will spawn, you kill the boss, and then you get some unique lost sector loot. Now to be really clear, these are not procedurally generated. Bungie have said in the past that each of these are going to be handcrafted, and it's highly likely that these will respawn, probably on some sort of timer, because I think it's highly unlikely that Bungie are going to make these big gigantic handcrafted areas and then make it so that enemies never ever respawn in there. So expect to be doing those fairly regularly. I think the initial hunt for those is just going to be kind of exciting during the campaign and immediately after. I'm looking forward to knocking all those over, and I'm interested to see how Bungie will make sure they keep these things fresh and us coming back to them rather than just ignoring them forever. Next up, Bungie announced world quests. So where we had adventures before, which were really small, discrete adventures telling one specific story, world quests are multi-chain, much larger quests. So the example that was provided here is that this quest that we're on is actually to explore the reason that Failsafe is with us, and Failsafe is the AI that is speaking to us throughout quite a few of the missions. He's like the female ghost voice that we hear in our ears, and this quest goes for a few different stages and it explains her backstory and sort of fleshes out that character. Interestingly enough, the world quests only open up after you finish the main campaign, so this already demonstrates that Bungie are trying to provide some sort of post-campaign progression and keep the story going after the main campaign ends, which is only a good thing. We also learned that each of the new planets is actually going to have multiple multiple landing zones that are going to open up as we continue to explore. So the Bungie developer that was speaking basically said that when we first arrive at a planet, we're actually not going to see anything on our map. It's going to be totally blank, and we're going to need to unlock parts of it as we progress through. And there's actually a chance that we'll stumble into areas that we're too low for. So yeah, we can kind of have to watch out for ourselves as we do it, which did happen a little bit in vanilla Destiny, but it was pretty rare. Most of the areas had enemies that were the same level throughout. It's not going to be the case here. But the fact that we get these additional landing zones is definitely convenient, because it was really annoying to have to land in one part of the planet if you knew you had to get to the other end of it. It was just an inconvenience, and the fact that that's going to be different is great. The thing I'm most excited about are the flashpoints. Now, flashpoints are essentially, and this is not quite true, but it's broadly true, these are essentially like open world nightfalls. Each week, one of the areas is selected, and everyone's sent there because when they go to those specific locations and they complete public events, they gain flashpoint progress, and eventually if they get enough of that progress, then they're going to start getting some sweet rewards. There's going to be additional bosses that spawn there. There's going to be unique loot that's going to spawn there. We also know that there's a new type of white engram which is going to be earnable from these flashpoints. It's called prestigious gear. They didn't say anything about it. We just know that it exists now, so that's also quite exciting. But the idea that we get sent to a specific location to grind out public events with other players, and they're harder, and there's extra stuff on the planet, and there's extra loot flowing, that's totally awesome. I'm all about being out in the open world as much as possible in Destiny. I loved grinding the different open areas, even though there wasn't really much to do in them, and it was a bit of a waste of time most of the time. It just felt really good to be out in open space shooting stuff, rather than always stuck in narrow strikes or in the raids. So the more that we get to explore these big open areas, and the more that we're asked to return to them each week for rewards, that's just great. Bungie also mysteriously teased that there was lots of other stuff coming that we haven't spoken about yet, and Luke Smith also recently tweeted out this. He said to delight and surprise, offering no further explanation on that, but it's pretty clear that he's certainly got some surprises up his sleeve. And I guess this is really coming back to the point I was making at the beginning of this video. This is the sort of stuff that we really need to see from Bungie at this point. This is new, different content that separates this game from the previous one. I know it's really easy to point to these specific things and be quite cynical about them and be like, oh well, it's just public events, we've already had those before, who cares, right? But it's not just that. It's public events with heroic triggers and proper loot that we're actually going to be able to benefit from. And they're weaving the stories into the quests that we're doing throughout these. And we're sent back to them in these sort of like Nightfall style open event scenarios. And there's new types of open events. And there's just so much stuff that's going into that open world endgame that wasn't there before. And I really think we need to give Bungie their due here. This is a definite innovation, separate and above what we saw in Destiny 1. And I personally am super excited about this. The beta is just about to end, and this is our last chance to touch Destiny 2 until it goes live on September 6th on Xbox and on PS4 on the 24th on PC. Do expect plenty more coverage from me between now and then. I've spent my entire time during this beta testing every weapon, looking at how DPS is calculated in Destiny. Can't quite answer that question yet, but certainly have made some really interesting observations about how that's changed since Destiny 1. Do keep an eye out for that video, and for now guys, thank you very much for watching, take care, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.